1,000 years ago in Europe, pre-Christian tribes originally had a goddess culture, a matriarchy where the earth and nature and their cycles and secrets were revered. In pre-industrial societies, illness was not seen as a random assault from outside but as a deeply significant life event integral to the sufferer's whole being, spiritual, moral, physical and life course, past, present and future. Disease was interpreted as packed with moral, spiritual and religious messages as one of the many ways through which God revealed his will to mankind. Other philosophies of medicine such as Ayurvedic or Tibetan think similarly. In these, disease has a karmic aspect. Around the 10th century, in Europe, after the so-called Dark Ages, women, the original stewards of the land, men did animal husbandry, were dispossessed of it by the new patriarchies of the church and state. This male hierarchy hid the things they were most afraid of, namely the fact that it is women who hold the key to the processes and powers of life. They took them as their own, decreeing laws about how we should behave to impose control and inventing original sin. Allied to this there came a prolonged persecution of women, especially any of those involved in healing. Some sources estimate about 5 to 9 million women were destroyed across Europe during this persecution. Essentially the role of women as healers and midwives was discouraged, and homemaking and its many associated skills is still regarded as a worthless career according to our primarily fiscal values based on GDP. When a patriarchy takes over a matriarchy as a fundamental paradigm shift, one of the main things that happens is that healing and spirituality are separated out as an instrument of control. The world of spirit and physic were separated and became even more so during the great male age of reason that began with Descartes and continued with Newton, the tail end of which many are presently clinging to in desperation and a degree of applied self-interest. René Descartes, 1596–1650, was a central influence on the 17th century revolution that began modern science and philosophy. His method of doubt was published in 1637. I resolved to reject as false everything in which I could imagine the least doubt, in order to see if there afterwards remained anything that was entirely indubitable. The philosophy of Cartesian dualism became part of our science, where the mind and the body are seen as essentially separate. The self, the conscious being that is me, was seen as essentially non-physical. Misguidedly, it was not Descartes' intention. This philosophy contributed to the mechanistic and rational philosophy of the universe adopted by our culture. Descartes was one of the first people to suggest that phenomena could be understood by breaking them down into constituent parts and examining each minutely. His view of the human body as a machine functioning within a mechanistic universe took prevalence within the Age of Reason. Consider the human body as a machine. My thought compares a sick man and an ill-made clock with my idea of a healthy man and a well-made clock. This attention to analytical detail is still at the heart of our scientific research methodologies. As a result, Western medicine has produced world-saving vaccines and antibiotics. It has created drugs and surgical techniques that do utterly amazing things. It has virtually eliminated all the serious communicable diseases in the First World, such as leprosy, plague, tuberculosis, tetanus, syphilis, rheumatic fever, pneumonia, meningitis, polio, septicemia. There are very few women dying in childbirth compared to the past. Western medicine has been, and is, a triumph in the face of these problems which worried us back then the way cancer and heart disease worry us today. Even the big medical problems of the 1930s and 40s have literally vanished. The age of infectious disease has given way to the age of chronic disorders. The major killers today are heart and vascular disease, chronic degenerative diseases and cancer, largely incurable and increasing in incidence. The strategies that worked so well for all but eliminating acute infectious diseases just don't seem to work for chronic and degenerative conditions. The prevalence of asthma, multiple sclerosis, chronic fatigue, immune deficiency syndrome, HIV and a host of other debilitating conditions is increasing. Conventional biomedicine, so strikingly successful in the treatment of overwhelming infections, surgical and medical emergencies and congenital defects, has been unable to stem the tide of these conditions. James Gordon M.D., Washington, D.C. Even during the time of Sir Isaac Newton, the human body was viewed as an intricate biological machine. The universe was an orderly, predictable but divine mechanism, a grand clockwork. Although hundreds of years have passed, Western scientific medicine still holds the same basic philosophy, but are more sophisticated in studying biological mechanisms at a molecular level. The first Newtonian approaches were essentially surgical. The body was seen as if it were a complex plumbing system. If it went wrong, the offending piece was removed or bypassed. These days, instead of using knives, drugs are often used to do more or less the same things. Humans, though, are far more than walking sacks of chemicals. The animating life force central to other medical systems is an energy that is not addressed by modern scientific methodology, and there are no Western medical models that explain what it is and what it does. It is misguided by the concept that all illnesses are cured by physically repairing or eliminating abnormal cells. This is partly due to a conflict between Western and Eastern philosophies and has its roots in the division of science and religion, along with the destruction of folk medicine in both US and Europe. Cancer cannot be treated effectively under a philosophy of reductionism. Scientific cancer research has failed to find a cure because it is looking in the wrong places with the wrong tools. Cancer needs to be understood as a whole disease in relation to each individual's experience and the culture of which they are part. It has multiple causes that vary with each patient. The strategies that worked so well for tackling acute infectious diseases are inappropriate for dealing with chronic and degenerative conditions. Cancer patients can be at best increasingly patched up by orthodox treatments but at spiraling health care costs. Cancer refers to a number of related diseases. In this disease, the cells in the human body start dividing and the process continues. These cells spread and affect the tissues around the area. Location of the disease. As far as the location of the cancer goes, it can affect any part of the body. Usually, the cells in the human body continue to grow and divide in order to create fresh cells. As soon as a cell grows old, it dies. A new cell comes into existence to take the dead cell's place. But when a person gets cancer, the process gets disrupted. The cells become abnormal. The old cells begin to survive instead of dying. Moreover, new cells develop even when they are not needed. To make the matter worse, the additional cells divide and may develop into tumors. The disease may appear as tumors. Another type of cancer is known as blood cancer or leukemias. Normally, cancer tumors can infect the surrounding tissues as well. Aside from this, as the tumors develop, some cells of the cancer can travel to other parts of the body via the lymph system or the blood. As a result, new tumors may develop. Difference between normal cells and cancer cells. There are a lot of differences between normal cells and cancer cells. Actually, cancer cells behave differently and play a negatively different role. While normal cells stop dividing after a certain period of time, but cancer cells continue to grow. Is cancer curable? Nowadays, it is possible to treat most types of cancers. As a matter of fact, 70% of kids with the disease have been cured successfully. The treatment methods of today can treat different types of cancers, such as Hodgkin's lymphoma, testicular cancer and leukemia, just to name a few. If the skin is affected with this disease, it is usually treated with surgery. Patients with larynx and thyroid cancers are treated with radiotherapy. Many other types of this disease can be treated if diagnosed at early stages. For instance, 75% of patients with breast cancers are diagnosed at an early stage. The problem is that different types of this disease are caused by different things. As a result, it is harder to use the same treatment to treat it. Research is still in progress in order to treat all types of cancers. The researchers have been working day and night in order to develop new treatments in order to fight with new types of this deadly disease. Biological therapies like gene therapies, Monoclonal antibodies and cancer vaccines are part of the research process. So, if you or your loved one has this disease, we suggest that you don't lose heart, as there are powerful treatments out there that can help you get rid of this disease. As a matter of fact, most people have had their cancers cured at an early stage. Therefore, we highly suggest that you get in touch with your doctor if you have any of the symptoms of this disease. Early diagnosis is of great help.